is Jenny Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today we have attorney Brian Vandiver joining us. He is an employment attorney located in North Little Rock. Hi, Brian. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having me again.
Of course, a lot of people will be interested to hear your opinion on Thursday's Supreme Court ruling. Kind of mixed emotions about it. On one hand, we're happy that it was upheld, that they agreed that OSHA should not be mandating these vaccinations and these protocols in private businesses. But then on the other hand, it seems like our healthcare workers really took a big hit. What is your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It was kind of a good news, bad news day. Both cases really centered on the question of, had Congress delegated the proper authority to that agency to enact their rule. And in the OSHA case, we saw clearly the Supreme Court said OSHA does not have that power and cannot enact the rule that they enacted through the ETS process. And so I think for all intents and purposes, that OSHA rule is dead. It can arguably continue in the litigation if the Biden administration wants to do that. I think most of us foresee the Biden administration maybe rescinding that rule. And if they want to try to attempt a more narrow rule that focuses on certain industries and arguably should go through the notice and comment period, which would address Justice Alito's concern as well. It's really not proper for an ETS rule in this scenario, but we'll see. But I think it's really good news on the OSHA rule, and all employers in Arkansas who were potentially subject to that rule can now say, we don't have to worry about that for now. As far as the healthcare workers, obviously not great news. The CMS rule lives. It will continue in litigation, and hopefully we get a different result once the full litigation is resolved. But for now, that CMS rule can be enforced across the country, and CMS has indicated that it will do so. So obviously not a great scenario for healthcare workers.
Well, and it doesn't make sense to me. We are seeing a massive shortage in healthcare facilities, and yet this CMS rule will be upheld. We're seeing things that, on one hand, if you're unvaxxed, you're fired, you can't work there. But then if you're vaccinated, not only is it safe to work there, you can come in with symptoms of COVID and work. How are we to make sense of all of this?
You can't. We're not dealing in a realm of reality or logic or science anymore. It's being pushed by politics and an agenda from DC. And so, we're having to deal with that locally, both in the legal aspect and in the realistic implications of everyday workers in the workplace. And unfortunately, that's going to have a very negative impact on a lot of unvaccinated medical workers in our state.
What about those Arkansans who were let go, from these private corporations, these businesses, and now this new ruling has come out? What would you say to them?
Well, today, January 14th, we know that the Arkansas statute that was adopted last fall, Act 1115, goes into effect. And so that is good law for all Arkansas employers, definitely those that are not covered by the CMS rule. And whether or not there's going to be a preemption issue with regard to the CMS covered facilities, we'll see. The courts will have to answer that. But it's clear that any facility that's not covered by CMS, that Arkansas statute is good law and applies. And so any employee that has been terminated because they were unvaccinated or put on unpaid leave because they were unvaccinated, my advice would be to immediately ask for reinstatement, be taken off leave and go back to work, because they were otherwise qualified but for their unvaccinated status. And under that new Arkansas law, they can now weekly test, or they can show proof of immunity, whether that's antibodies or a positive COVID test in the past 6 months. And so I encourage employers to acknowledge that law and make sure that if they have a mandatory vaccination policy, they need to make sure it is in compliance with that state law now, because there was so much worry and stress over, oh, we've got to be in compliance with the federal law. Well, I'm telling my clients and other employers, hey, you need to be worried about being in compliance with the state law, because that's good law that does apply.
You have worked with our co-founder, Brenda Vassar-Taylor, with the Arkansas Economic Defense Fund. Talk to us a little bit about that. Maybe these employees who were previously fired or let go, how could they get involved if they want to take the steps that you were talking about? How would they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to our fund, our group, ask for help and advice. We're going to be communicating, I think, globally to encourage those employees that have suffered adverse reactions so far to now try to enforce their rights and say, hey, under Arkansas law, I'm protected. I have the right to weekly test. I have the right to show my proof of immunity. And therefore, I should be able to be employed even though I'm unvaccinated. And we're hopeful that Tyson and other employers in our state that have taken a very aggressive approach will recognize the Arkansas law that now applies and reconsider some of those decisions.
We hope so too. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add or you want people to know?
Well, I just hope that everyone knows that we're trying to fight the good fight. We're trying to do our best to stand up for religious liberty and the rights of individual workers and businesses to make sure that we're doing what's fair and just for everyone in our state. For those healthcare workers that received the bad news yesterday, it's not the end of the road. The CMS rule still requires hospitals and other medical providers to provide accommodations under Title VII and other laws. So if you have a religious accommodation or medical accommodation that should be given, you need to request that. And so that's no exemption or carte blanche excuse for them not to honor those requests.
And we certainly hope that they will honor those requests that come in. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. We always really appreciate your insight and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Anytime. Thanks, Jenny.